before that, because we're going to discuss. Let's just start with just the beginning. Here I have little handouts. If you don't have the book, you have the book?
I have a book.
If you have the book, if you don't have the book, so take this. If you don't have the book, if you have the book, then we're going to start on what page does it say there?
Doesn't say.
Doesn't say?
No, it just says
What does it
some
read?
literal.
I think it's 100. No?
Oh.
I think it's 99. I can't read.
101.
I got
100,
99.
101.
Is the tzimtzum
99.
literal?
Oh,
Is the tzimtzum literal? What does tzimtzum mean? Tzimtzum means the contraction. All right, so we're going to discuss here if the tzimtzum is literal or not. Okay, it's an incredible thing, because what this does, what does it make? What difference does it make to us? It makes all the difference in the world, because, and we're going to see it, how we relate to God, how we relate to the infinite light. And it's going to make a difference in the world, and we're going to see it, okay? But first we have to get a little introduction here, okay? The following pages, until the end of this chapter, were included in the original manuscript version of the Tanya, circulated by the author during 1792 to 1796, okay? However, the author omitted this addendum from the printed edition, which appeared in 1796, presumably so as not to further antagonize those who had opposed the Hasidic movement. Okay? You have ever heard of the word misnagdim before?
Yeah,
Yeah.
positions.
Mitnaged or misnagdim. Right? When I was in the yeshiva, and I didn't know anything about that. And I was in yeshiva for several years. And I'm like going, what's a misnagid? And so they told me in yeshiva, you're a misnagid. Just so that you know, there's Hasidim and there's misnagdim.
No.
You're a misnagid. I go, oh, okay.
Is that good or
Good, I
bad?
know what team
Yeah.
I'm on. Thanks,
Yeah.
because I didn't know what team I was on. Okay? Okay? The yeshiva was a misnagdish, we say like that, yeshiva. Okay? Against the Hasidim. Okay? And the misnagid literally means against. Okay? Neged, against. Okay?
To negate, yeah.
Negate, we're against you. You guys are Hasidim, we are against you. Okay? Misnagdim, Yeshir, there she got it. Okay. Is there another? No. Okay. Okay, so presumably this is not to further antagonize those who had opposed the Hasidic movement, okay? Because of the ideas that are going to be presented in the following text. Presumably, okay? I don't have any more handouts, sorry.
Yeah.
But you have to have that, okay?
This is something else, but I'm reading from that right now.
The passage was omitted from the subsequent 29 printings of the Tanya, okay? In other words, they printed the Tanya 29 times and they did not put this section in it until the Vilna edition in 1900, in which was reincorporated as an addendum to chapter 7. Okay? So, in other words, this text was left out, as we're going to see. Okay? So what are we going to talk about? We have to talk about a little bit about the tzimtzum, and then we have to understand, is the tzimtzum literal or not? So we have to get a little background. So I want to give you this first. This is my book in the study of Kabbalah that I gave
this is your book?
classes on it several times. So if you'll look at the beginning, there's a little bit of a bad print, but it is page numbers, so that we can be happy about, okay? Sometimes there's no page numbers. So if you go to page 10, this is just an important background stuff, and I'm going to give it to you. You might have been in the classes already previously and had a dabble with it, okay? I have other copies. I have one other copy here, okay? And if you'd like to buy these, they are on sale, okay, for $15 a piece, okay? Notice how it's nice paper. Okay, the word tzimtzum means contraction and constriction and refers to the process by which God, quote unquote, withdrew the light of the infinite in order to create the universe. In order to remove any obscurity, we will bring from the original text written by the 16th century Kabbalist Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, known as the Arizal. Know that before all things were emanated and created, there was only supernal light that was simple, filling all of existence. There was no empty space that would be called emptiness, space, emptiness, or void. Everything was filled with that simple light of the Ein Sof, infinite. There was no category of beginning or end. All was one simple, undifferentiated light. Turn the page. Pictures speak 1,000 words. When it arose in his simple will to create the worlds, to emanate that which became emanated, to bring to light the completion of his acts and names and nicknames, in other words, manners of expression, okay? God willed to have an expression, okay? Which is the purpose of creation of all of these worlds. Then he constricted his infinite light, distancing it to the sides around a center point, leaving a vacated space in the middle of the light of the Ein Sof.
In the middle of the infinite?
In the middle of the around a center point, what would later be in the center of creation. So he constricted his infinite light, distancing it to the sides around a center point, as you see the picture, leaving a vacated space in the middle of the light of the Ein Sof. In other words, around the picture here, you'll have the light of the Ein Sof, and within this sphere is called the vacated space. And there's a middle point in the vacation. And ignore that little point there in the bottom, okay? Just the middle point, okay? The space, this is his words, was perfectly spherical. After this constriction took place, there was a place in which all things could be brought into existence, created, formed, and made. He then drew a simple concentrated ray from the infinite light into the vacated space. The upper extremity of this ray touched the infinite light of the Ein Sof that surrounded the space towards its center. The next page, top of page 12. It was in this vacated space that he emanated, created, formed, and made all of the worlds. This ray is a single thin pipe which extends and is drawn from the waters of the cosmic light of the Ein Sof, the infinite, to the worlds which exist in the empty vacated space. So here we have basically the description of the tzimtzum, the constriction, according to the Arizal, and we have geometric figures in here. You have a sphere, right? And then you have this ray extending into the sphere. Okay? These are the words of the Ari. How do we understand these words? Okay? Now let's go back to the text. Okay? So here we're going back to that page 99 where you see the first paragraph. From the discussion above in section 6, you will understand the error of a few scholars, wise in their own eyes. May God pardon them. It's a very strong language. Okay, why? Shishagu v'ta'au be'iunam b'kisvei ari zichron v'bracha. They were authentic Kabbalists, but nevertheless inadvertently erred in their analysis of the writings of the Rabbi Yitzchak Luria of blessed memory. Okay? So here I just gave you basically what happens and what the definition of. So you can go to the next page, 99. You can flip over. Okay? And go to the second paragraph. Certain scholars, it begins with certain scholars, should be page 100 here. Certain scholars, where is it? Are you on page 100? Here.
I don't see it.
Oh man, did I do the wrong?
No, it's here.
No.
It's after the Hebrew.
It's on the sheets. Maybe I don't have them on.
Certain scholars.
Yeah.
I went to the wrong page.
Where do you see it?
On the right side.
Here. Certain scholars.
Second paragraph.
Certain
okay.
scholars understood that tzimtzum, the concept of tzimtzum, diminishment of the divine, mentioned here in Arizal's in a literal way. We could say it kipshuto. Okay? Is it tzimtzum kipshuto, literal? Or is it lav kipshuto? Is it not literal? Is it figurative? Is it conceptual? Right? Is it conceptual or is it literal? Did he literally make a vacated space and there's really a place where God is not? And he's floating out there beyond the universe, the Andromeda galaxy, with his super binoculars, checking everybody out and taking notes. Okay? David, bad boy, check. Okay? No weight set for him this Hanukkah.
Just making a
Okay.
list. He's checking
Okay.
twice.
Sha'kodesh Baruch Hu silek atzmo umehuso has v'shalom. God forbid. They make the mistake and they say what? Meaning that they understood that the act of tzimtzum, of this constriction, God himself actually departed from the place where he later created this world. God forbid. This is what the Lubavitcher Rebbe is saying. Now, the first most prominent author to argue forcefully that the tzimtzum was to be interpreted literally, who was a person who came out with it to say, this is literal. The tzimtzum, the constriction is literal. Who was this guy? So it was Raphael Emanuel Chai Ricci, an Italian Kabbalist who later settled in Sfat, Israel. Rabbi Ricci became an authority on the Arizal's Kabbalah through his influential work, and you can get this sefer to this day, Mishnas Chasidim.
Is that Riccanati?
No,
Different?
Raccanati is somebody completely different. Okay, Mishnas Chasidim is a classic work on Kabbalah, and this person was a huge scholar and a very holy. Okay. Yeah.
He believed it's literal.
Yes. He wrote that it is literal.
He was wrong?
We'll read on. Question.
Yes, so let me get my understanding. The Hasidic movement takes it as literal, and then
The Misnagdim, let's
takes
read.
it
Let's read it.
not
It's
literal.
important for you to be exposed to this text, because this is going to depend on now the decision. What are you going to be? Are you going to be with the Misnagdish camp, or are you going to be with the Hasidic camp? Okay? The interesting thing is we are hundreds of years after that. Let's just read it and then we'll discuss. Okay? It's really important stuff to get this. Okay? He wrote, right? He was an authority on the Arizal's Kabbalah through his influential work, Mishnas Chasidim. You can get that book. You can order it on Amazon right now. A systematic summary of the Arizal's writing, Mishnas Chasidim, was a highly authoritative work relied upon many times by the author of the Tanya himself. There were certain places he explained things, and we went after his explanation. However, right, there's a certain sefer he wrote, in Yosher Levav, Rabbi Ricci offered a lengthy argument why the tzimtzum must be read literally. His central proof for this position was so that you do not come to tarnish God's honor and think that God is actually present in the low, dishonorable, physical, and even disgusting things, God forbid. Because without tzimtzum, right, taken literally, there would be no place empty of his self. Okay, in other words, you need tzimtzum to have something other than God. And we can't say that God, don't forget everything we've been discussing now, all of his chapters, all the way through chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and partially of 7, the way we've been understanding it is God is infusing he's everywhere. And we have, when the place, there's in the space in our minds, where we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, upper unity, everything is nullified in God's light, like a ray of sunlight in the light of the sun. And then there's, of course, how he screened himself, how he hid himself. It's just a hiding, but he's there. How he hid himself in all of the physical reality. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Moed. He is in everything, behind everything. Okay? That's a huge problem you get to if you really think that. And he's going to talk about it. Okay? And the big issue is, just to cut to the chase, when you start to think that, people will start to tell you, and they will tell you, well, if God is everything, God is everywhere, God is the book, God's the table, God is the chair, and then you go to the big mistake, I am God. Okay? That's the big problem. Okay? When you start to think like that. So we have to understand, and this is how the Misnagdim are going to think, this is how they view the Hasidim, their thought is going towards that direction. Okay? Where people do actually come to that conclusion, which is not a correct conclusion.
But that we each have a divine soul.
Yes! The question is, that doesn't mean I'm God, and therefore if I get a thought in my mind, that's if God is telling me to do it, and therefore I have to throw rocks at cars that are driving on Shabbat.
Shabbos!
Okay? Or spray paint on people who are not modestly dressed when they're walking down the street. Or vice versa. We can go on.
We're all God, but we're not authority.
Let's just work the text and then we'll talk more. Okay? Okay.
Would you go over that line again? Without Tzimtzum?
Without Tzimtzum taken literally, there will be no place empty of his self. In other words, we have to exist. We need Tzimtzum. He says you have to have Tzimtzum. Without Tzimtzum, in other words, a real place, right? There will be no place empty of his self, meaning then God would be filling it and we wouldn't be able to exist. You need Tzimtzum. Everybody says you need Tzimtzum, but he says you need literal Tzimtzum because otherwise he'd be filling every place and we wouldn't be able to exist. Okay? But the idea really here he's saying in the first part of the sentence is, how can you say that God is in the bathroom? Or how can you say God is in these despicable creatures? How can you say that? Okay? So therefore, his writing was, we're going to go literal. That's how he understood the Arizal. There's a literal vacated space, and he's, like I said, beyond who knows whatever nebulous galaxies are beyond everything. We can't see that far. Okay? Why did the Tanya reject those who adopted Yosher Levav's position so strongly? Even writing, and he wrote, may God pardon them. May God forgive these people who think that it's literal. May God forgive them. Because it is very strong. As we shall see in the next section, the question of whether the Tzimtzum is literal is a matter of central importance since it touches on two principles of faith. This point was stressed by Rabbi Yosef Irgas, right, a commentary of Rabbi Richi, and a strong advocate of the non-literal reading of Tzimtzum. After offering 10 arguments why the Tzimtzum must be read non-literally, Rabbi Irgas concludes, anyone who understands the Tzimtzum literally will come to make many mistakes and will come to contradict many of the principles of faith. In other words, it's a huge crux, and it's a huge beginning point. Which way you're going to go is going to determine, are you going to be in the camp or out of the camp? Are you in with the people who really believe in a unlimited God, or are you going to get into the other camp, God forbid? Okay? So here he says, actually Rabbi Irgas says, kavod kedushato, pardon for his holiness, the one who wrote, right, Rabbi Richi, right, he disagrees. And he said, there's no way you can understand this literally. He's a holy man, but this is a big mistake. Okay? The rejection of a literal reading of Tzimtzum is something Rabbi Shneur Zalman received from his teacher, the Maggid of Mezrich, Rabbi Hillel Malisov of Partich, that's who's called the Maggid. One of Rabbi Shneur Zalman's prominent disciples noted, this is a different rabbi, sorry, Rabbi Hillel Malisov of Partich. Did I say it right now? Parich, I got it. One of Rabbi Shneur Zalman's prominent disciples noted that his master had heard in Mezrich not to understand that Tzimtzum literally. In other words, he got it directly from his Rav, Rabbi the Maggid. Okay? In one of Rabbi Shneur Zalman's discourses, the emphasis on sharply rejecting a literal reading of Tzimtzum is attributed to the Baal Shem Tov himself. He states that Tzimtzum needs to be understood well and thoroughly, divorced from any physical connotation. For the Baal Shem Tov protested against those who studied Kabbalah and did not know to interpret its symbols non-physically. In other words, a lot of people would read that's a big problem, of course, with learning Kabbalah. We draw anthropomorphisms into the study because they're talking about things which is really just to help us get a grip on things, and they use a lot of terminologies. And they're all considered borrowed terminology, but really nothing is to be taken literal. It's in the cosmic realm, and we don't understand what goes on, okay? But nothing in the Kabbalah is to be taken like in its physical sense, okay? In the view of those who interpreted the Tzimtzum literally, how does God interact with the world if he has actually removed himself from it? Here's the first question, okay? In other words, God constricted himself. The light of the infinite is outside the sphere, and we are in the little center, right, all alone. There's a big distance. How does God go ahead and how do we have that relationship? Okay? Those who interpreted the Tzimtzum literally understand that God is not himself present in the world, but merely supervises from above through what we call hashgacha pratit, or divine providence, over every single creation in the heavens above and the earth below. Those who took the tzimtzum literally did not believe that God had abandoned the world, God forbid. In this view, while God is seen to have removed his sacred presence from the mundane physical world, he is still understood to be supervising and controlling its every detail. This is brought from Yoshar Levav, the same book from Rabbi Emmanuel Richi. At this point, whether God's presence is to be found within the mundane physical objects, discussed it later in this chapter, was one of the key points of contention between the early Hasidic movement and its opponents called the Misnagdim. It was one of the reasons why Tzvat Arivash, which is an early compilation of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mezrich, was publicly burned by the Hasidim. Don't forget, when they came out with the books... By the Misnagdim, sorry. When they came out with the books, teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, they finally were publishing them. Actually, the first one was from Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polonia. They burned his books. Okay? They took out those books, and believe me, it didn't go too much farther. And I mean, it did go far, because still to this day, you will find in Misnagdish yeshivas that I was in myself how they handled those kind of books. Rabbi Nachman's books and all of the books of the Hasidim. Just to throw you out a little bit of a story here, since it came to my mind just now. This short one. You know, the Baal Shem Tov, his cousin, was a huge rabbi called the Noda B'Yehuda. The Noda B'Yehuda was a posek, unbelievable, leader of the generation. And the Baal Shem Tov would come by and hang out with his cousin. Hey, cousin, let's hang. Okay, now the Noda B'Yehuda, this rabbi, wasn't so, okay, my cousin, hang out, right? Of course, it was a famous story. Somebody knocks on the door with a shaila, a question, halachic question about a chicken. This chicken, is it kosher or not kosher, right? It was checked it a certain way. We got a question on the chicken if it's kosher. So the Baal Shem Tov, he's probably smoking his pipe, chilling out, and he looks at the chicken, he goes, it's kosher. I see it in the aura. And the Noda B'Yehuda goes, whoa, buddy boy, we just don't do things like that. And he looks up the books, and after he looks at the books, it's kosher. Now, the Noda B'Yehuda said about the Baal Shem Tov, he says, Baal Shem Tov is an Am Haaretz.
Am Haaretz, okay.
You know what an Am Haaretz is? Literally means man of the land, but it really means an ignoramus.
Oh.
And you know what happened as a result of that? What happened as a result of that? I heard it from somebody who actually did an investigation. There could be loops in it, but I know somebody, a rabbi, a friend of mine, who did a study. Every single one of the descendants of the Noda B'Yehuda is Hasidic. Boom, flipped on him. Okay. So in other words, he put down the Baal Shem Tov, and as a result, the Baal Shem Tov didn't say anything. He didn't say, okay, just now all your descendants are going to be Hasidim. All of the descendants of the Noda B'Yehuda, the Misnagdish of the Misnagdish, became Hasidim. Okay? Watch out who you put down. Okay?
Wait a minute.
The Heirut.
So they both agreed that it was kosher.
Yeah, in the end, but the question is, you have a process. The Noda B'Yehuda was right. He was, listen, I wasn't there. Okay? It was a story that I heard, and, we have our process, and you do have to look it up, and that is, you have to do what's right. Okay?
But the best, he was special. He just knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be that the Besh also knew the halachas, and he went through them in his head because the guy was a super genius. The guy knew everything. He went through all of the book, all the laws, but he wanted to, he likes to poke. He wanted to poke fun in his cousin. He says, I saw it in the aura. But really, he probably went through all of this for him, and he knew exactly what it was. Okay? We'll say like that. Okay? Okay, where are we? Tell me what paragraph we're on. Okay. They burned the books. They burned the books of the Hasidic books.
That's terrible.
The concept was referred to... Okay, here we go. The concept was also referred to by Rabbi Eliyahu, the Gaon of Vilna, who was the leader, absolute leader, at the same time contemporary of the Baal Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman. As a matter of fact, the story goes that the Baal Tanya wanted to go visit the Vilna Gaon and have a discussion, and it didn't happen. The discussion didn't happen.
He wouldn't let him in.
He had a phone call, or he wouldn't let him in, or something. He was busy. Whatever. He wouldn't let him in. Whatever it was, they did not meet in the end. So there was a big rift. Okay? Okay? He was the most authoritative, the Vilna Gaon was the most authoritative Torah scholar in Europe at the time. This guy knew Shas backward and forward, like you know ABC. Forward, this guy knew all of Shas from every detail backwards. The same as, just as fast. Okay? Everything, clear. In his 1796 public proclamation against the Hasidic movement, responding to the Tzvata Rivash statement, everything in the universe contains holy sparks. That's what he says in the Tzvata Rivash. Everything in the universe. Do you have this? You're missing the sheet? That's because, here we go.
We finished on
102.
101 and then you went somewhere else.
That's right, because I'm going to try to find it here.
So
Ah,
Does it come out of
it comes on this side of the page. I only have 5 copies.
102.
Whoever doesn't have a
Is
copy.
it on there?
It's on this side of the page. Okay? You have? You took it already.
There it is. Right.
Here's another one.
You don't need it, you have the book?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, we didn't have it.
So the Rivash's statement is just to keep you awake. So you
So
In
who
case
is
you're
it
sleeping.
that knew the Sha'as backward and forward?
the Vilna Gaon.
Oh, wow.
No, I mean there's stories of it was unbelievable. His mind.
He was
He unbelievable. He went around. It's unbelievable what the depth and breadth of his knowledge was unbelievable. Okay, they say he should have been like an Arishon. He should have, he came from somebody who was generations ago, before him.
If he had heard what they had to say, and did he have a misconception that would have been cleared up, and he would not have been against them?
I don't have an answer. Okay, I don't have an answer. The Hasidim do say that they made peace in the end somehow, but I didn't see that inside. I didn't see that. Okay. But anyways, the statement of the Baal Shem Tov is, everything in the universe contains holy sparks, even sticks and stones.
Mm-hmm.
So the Gaon wrote that Hasidim misinterpret the Torah and proclaim that every stick and every stone, Eile Elokecha Yisrael, these are your gods, Israel, which is reference to the golden calf. In other words, he's saying that the Hasidim are Oved Avodah Zarah. Oved Avodah Zarah, they are idol worshippers.
Oh, my.
Because they are worshiping, they are saying that sticks and stones are God. Chas v'shalom. The letter is reproduced in the Mordecai Walensky Hasidim U'Miznagdim Volume 1. I don't have that book, so I didn't see it inside. But I'll take his word for it. Since the two ideas, so you see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
The Misnagdim are coming from you guys seeing holy sparks and everything. That means everything is God. That means the stones are God, sticks are God, and then you go to
The golden calf.
then you go to Yashka. Then you can believe that Yashka is a god. Okay? Since the two ideas interpreting the Tzimtzum, non-literally and the presence of the divine in sticks and stones are closely linked, we would expect to find that the Gaon understood the Tzimtzum more literally. It seems that way. He doesn't say it. He does not say it, but from this statement, it seems like he is inclining to understand that Tzimtzum as literal, but it's not expressed, right? While this is not stated explicitly in his writings, he never uses the terms literal or non-literal, kipshuto or lav kipshuto. Some of the Gaon statements imply that he did embrace a literal reading. The strongest such indication is his description of the divine reemergence after the tzimtzum known as the kav or the line. You remember that we went through the sphere, God vacated himself, and there was a sphere, and then he drew a line towards the center point. So what is that line? So the Vilna Gaon says, right, it's interpreted, he interprets it as mere divine, quote unquote, providence. In other words, it's hashgacha, God's providence, meaning his powers of overlooking everything, overseeing, and not the presence of God himself. Okay? This, as the Tanya stated above, is a hallmark of the literalist camp, if you say that. If you say that that kav, that line, that ray that's coming into the sphere, is not divinity itself, but God's divine providence, so that is an indication to the Balatanya that's somebody who
Literal.
understands it literally.
What's the difference between divinity and divine providence?
Okay, so one is it's an expression of God's divine providence. In other words, he's pushing buttons and sending the message and the forces of this, but it's not God himself.
Well, how can that be?
Is it Mamish Kedusha, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the light or Ein Sof? Or is it, no, it's a function of God's will.
But even the
An expression of God's will.
Even the Or Ein Sof is a,
Yes,
is a,
it's true. The Or Ein Sof is Or Ein Sof. It's not Ein Sof itself. But as far as we're concerned, because there's levels of Ein Sof upon Ein Sof, of unlimitedness of unlimitedness, so we look at it as it is the radiance of God himself. Okay? That's how the non-literalists are looking at it.
So one way of seeing it is that we're here in our little sphere and he's got these machines and stuff so that he can check on us, but he never goes inside the little sphere.
This is how the literalists would look at it. Okay? It's his providence. In other words, he's manipulating. It's an energy of manipulation, but that's not God himself. Could be angels. Angels use the constellations. They use the stars to transmit their influence. That's how it works. The system works through a series of channels. That's the Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato.
He's got a bunch of robots.
Yeah, the Rambam. What?
Robots?
Not robots. Well, kind of, because angels are kind of like one-track minds. They only do one thing. It's
They
like
do exactly what
very
they're
much
told to
like
do and nothing-
very much
nothing
like the
less.
functions in our minds when we want to lift a hand. What is that? It sends a message to the hand, to the arms, the muscles lift. It only knows how to do that. Okay? But it's not God himself. It's God's hashgacha.
So
Okay?
So is your
Is that
hand
why-
not part of you?
Part, but not me.
Do you think that's why Rabbi Nachman said to talk to your body parts?
That's an interesting idea. Yes. I mean, I don't know. I have to think about that. Okay?
It's probably a good idea.
It is a good idea. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if the Vilna Gaon says that the Hasidim are wrong because they interpret God's presence in sticks, okay, then, okay, so that would mean they're wrong because they're literal, because everything. But he says they're wrong, right?
He says you cannot say that there is divinity in sticks and stones.
Which is another way of saying God isn't everywhere.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Right.
Yeah, but his
So the
glory is
Hasidim
everywhere.
are not
Holy,
literal.
holy, holy.
The Hasidim are not literal. Okay? But this, don't forget, he doesn't say, the Vilna Gaon doesn't say, I hold by literal. It's just an indication. Okay? It could be that you can interpret it differently, how he's saying that ray that extends into the sphere is divine providence. He could still say, no, it is the actual light of the Ein Sof. Okay? It's just, so far, the indication from the words, it indicates that he is in the literalist camp, but it is not explicit. Okay? In another text, the Vilna Gaon describes the Tzimtzum as a removal of the divine, a term used by those who interpret the doctrine literally. But once again, he doesn't say it explicitly, but it's implied. Okay? It is no wonder then that Rabbi Shneur Zalman chose to omit the entire addendum, what we're about to read, from the printed version of the Tanya, since it contains a lengthy explanation of how God is present in physical objects, even stones. The ideas here had clearly resulted in much hardship. For Hasidim, as they had contributed to the Gaon's intense hostility to Hasidim. Right? The Gaon had just publicly declared a few months before the Tanya was sent to print, anyone who is called a Jew, whose heart is touched by fear of God, it is incumbent upon him to repulse them and persecute them, the Hasidim, with every kind of persecution and subjugate them wherever the hand of a Jew can reach.
Damn. Damn, that's crazy.
But that's why.
Very strong
That's
terms.
why they've
But
been
they
trying
found
to
it
get
very
together.
offensive to have it.
Let everybody do a harump, harump, harump. Everybody's got to get a harump. We got to get I didn't get a harump out of you. Okay. Harump!
Is that an impeachable
But-
offense?
No one saw Blazing Saddles? No one remembers? Ah.
I have an idea or a
So,
thought.
So the Mitnagdim betrayed the Hasidim even to the Russian government.
Say that again?
Ooh.
Yes, they did. There were certain cases like that.
that's against.
It
Torah.
went bad. It went bad. It was bad. It was brutal. And
That's not.
it was brutal. It's a little bit less now. Now, because there's so many Hasidim, because they're everywhere, what are the poor Misnagdim going to do?
But they're not even, like,
They need a minion. They got 9 men, they need 1, and there's only this guy with a Strymel walking down the street.
in 90-degree weather.
They've accepted it. They've accepted it. Okay? They're here. Right? But it's much deeper. Okay? Furthermore, since the Gaon appears to have been sympathetic towards the view that the Tzimtzum was literal, sharp criticism of that position here in the Tanya could have easily been interpreted as an attack by the author on the Gaon himself, so then it would have been an all-out war. And he didn't want to do that. That's why he had to omit this, because it would have been in your face, right? And you don't want to do that. There's already enough tension.
It would create
They're
more
they're
strife.
already egging Hasidim on the street. Okay? We don't need it. This was unlikely to have been the author's intention, as generally speaking. Rabbi Shneur Zalman's approach to navigating opposition to his movement was one of moderation and restraint from retaliation when attacked, and they were attacked. Okay? It would also be highly out of character for Rabbi Shneur Zalman to charge the Gaon with heresy. Oh, don't do that.
Oh, well, no.
When in other writings he accords him the utmost respect. Okay? Rather, the author's intention here, as the rest of Tanya appears to have been scholarly rather than polemical, he sought to explain the fundamental worldview of Hasidism. That all objects, even sticks and stones, are saturated with the divine presence. And since Rabbi Shneur Zalman's writings are characterized by placing Hasidism in the context of the Arizal's Kabbalah, he chose to make clear that the Hasidic worldview is based on a rejection of a literal reading of the Arizal's Tzimtzum. Okay? In other words, the Hasidim, Baal Shem Tov, all the way down, right? And many Kabbalists also have adopted that to this day, that the Tzimtzum is not to be taken literally. Okay? And they want to even say that the Vilna Gaon never even said literally also, right? The Misnagdim have to go ahead, and that's why I have this book here. If we get to it, I will share with you. This is the Nefesh HaChaim, written by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Volozhin, who was the main student of the Vilna Gaon. But when we get to the language, then I'll share with you what he says in terms of the Tzimtzum and how he understands it. Yes?
I'm thinking of the prayer we say after using the bathroom. It says, in the middle of it, it says, "It is known before the throne of your glory."
Yeah, but the throne is over there and not here.
But it's known.
Correct.
But
Okay?
that's the Asher Yatzeh.
It's an amazing statement what she says,
Yeah.
and I've read a parish before it. Why are you saying throne of glory, right? Coming out of the bathroom, right?
Oh, it would be the other
That's
throne.
Lifnei, like galui v'yadua lifnei kisei kivotecha. Why in all the places you're saying galui v'yadua lifnei before your holy throne of glory? It's before. Really, the idea is God's the providence that your bowels are working. Okay, comes right from the throne of glory. That's an unbelievable sign, a statement of
Yeah, but
appreciation.
And it goes back to what, Talmudic times?
Yeah, for sure. It was
Yeah, but
stated
they-
by the it was instated by the before the Talmudic.
But the purpose of that blessing is...
The Anshe Knesset Gedolah wrote the Siddur. They
You
were
don't
after
have to
the.
be a
Yeah, but if
Kabbalist
your
even.
body is working, then you have the ability to be before the throne of God to pray. That was the idea of that blessing. That if things that are not working...
Okay, that's
then
an
you're-
interesting
then you're not
understanding.
able...
So I can't continue. It's going on from here further on.
Right. You cannot go before the throne of glory and pray and
Some
praise.
people interpret it as like,
Because-
wow, thank God everything opened and closed
If
exactly as
things
it
that
should
are
have.
open-
Because otherwise I wouldn't, you know.
If
But
things
people,
that are supposed to be open aren't open, and things are supposed to be closed aren't closed, then you are in no condition to pray.
Okay.
That was the idea.
Well, and the picture on my copy that sticks to the refrigerator, of all places, has a picture of somebody having a heaven forbid, a heart attack. As if those are the pipes that they're talking about, but those aren't the same pipes.
no, listen, all pipes. It's a segula to say that blessing with intense concentration, and because it brings a special property to heal all flesh.
To heal all
Everybody.
flesh.
And you can do it in the name of someone else who's
That's
sick.
all that's all.
You can have it in mind, someone else who's sick, that it should be the merit of your concentration of your blessing should heal and someone else. Always do
And
that.
he runs off.
Okay? We did that with my son Elisha. We've spent special sheets, handed them all over the place. Please have in mind when you're saying this blessing of Asher Yatzar for my son. Okay? All right, going on. Section 2, proofs that the tzimtzum is not literal. Okay, so now we got to the two sides. The Misnagdim, right, who hold that it's literal to a sense. We don't know 100%, but most likely they're leaning towards that, and they have who to rely on. And then the Hasidim, who like the Baal Shem Tov and all his followers, who say no. Okay, having stated that Hasidism is based on a rejection of a literal reading of the tzimtzum, the Tanya offers two arguments to support the non-literal approach. Okay? V'hinei, milvad she'iyavshar klal lomar inyan hatzimtzum kipshut. Now, besides the fact that taking the tzimtzum literally is totally unacceptable, according to the Rambam's third principle of faith, which he says, Shehu mimikri haguf al HaKadosh Baruch Hu, since a literal reading of tzimtzum attributes corporeal qualities to God, right, who is endlessly and infinitely removed from them. In other words, the Rambam says, Eino guf, God does not have a body. There's no corporeality that you can attribute to the Ein Sof, to the light of the infinite. So here he wants to say, and here's his is how he understands it. Rabbi Shneur Zalman argues that a literal reading of tzimtzum contravenes the logic underlying Rambam's third principle of faith, that God is incorporeal. Having a body means you are found in one place and in another, and not in another. If God can literally remove himself from a physical space, it means that God is subject to properties of the physical world, which in turn implies corporeality. I'm a little shaky about his understanding of it, okay? Because, you know, there's the philosophical question, can God make a rock that he cannot lift? Right?
And
That's
then
a
he's
problem.
limitless,
That's a
so
problem.
he should be able to
Have you
do
heard that
but then
before?
he's limitless.
Can God make a
Yeah.
stone that he cannot lift? If he cannot lift it, then he's not God, because you have to be
can lift
all
it.
powerful. But but if he can't make a stone that he cannot lift, so then that means also, you know, you're stuck, right? You're on what?
That's a property of language.
But the answer is, of course, he can make a stone that he cannot lift.
Oh, he
Okay.
can?
Hakol b'dei shamayim chutz miyirat shamayim. Everything comes from heaven except fear of heaven. Again, everything comes from God except fear of God, meaning we have free will. Free will means we can go this way, we can go that way, with our own decision.
There shouldn't be any stone that he can make that he can't lift. That
But he
makes no
wanted
sense.
to. He willed to make a stone, so to speak. He wanted to make an entity that has free will. Total free will. Okay? Meaning he can't get you to fear him. You have to make them efforts to have... Fear means faith, emunah. He could try to push a lot of buttons and throw a lot of stuff at you. You know, there's that famous imagery that they say that the guy who got stuck on the roof one time, and he's stuck there, and he can't, the door was locked to go downstairs, and the only thing he has, and it's way far down, and he screams, no one can hear him, he throws like $100 bill down, right? So a guy comes, he picks it up, he keeps walking. He throws another $100 bill down, the guy picks it up, keeps walking. Throws a rock down, hits somebody in the head. Hey, what's going on out there? Right? When good things, no one looks up.
Right.
No looks up to God. Hey, where did this $100 bill come from? Right? No one looks up. When it gets hit in the head with a rock, hey, right? When God, he throws
Want a
things.
refund.
He throws things at us. Like hopefully we'll wake up. Right? Hopefully you'll wake up and go, okay, there's a God in the world. He's running everything. Let me get on track. That's emunah. God throws things at you. What's your reaction? Right? You're going to get mad at the rock, which people do. People get this thing. They'll blame the rock. They'll go to therapists over the rock. The therapy of 10 years over the rock. Okay? They'll do that. They'll blame the rock. We gotta impeach the rock. Okay? Okay. So any case, but still we have to understand, because when God made a kingdom, He wanted a kingdom implies you have a king and you have a nation, right? You can't have a king without a people. So how can you have this relationship? God lowered Himself, so to speak, that He will be attributed this idea of He rules over everything, and then we would accept Him to be the boss. Just let go and let God, right? Give it up to the higher power. Okay? So He can lower Himself to be in such a situation where, yeah, He did vacate Himself. I'm giving like an answer to the misnagdim, a possible rebuttal to this. But just to understand how the Baal Tanya is writing, and he's saying, hey, are we there? Oh, we're almost there. If He vacated Himself, that means, how can it be? God has to be, all right, no, He's beyond all space. Space is not associated with God. So it can't be He vacates Himself into a physical space, out of a physical space. When with God, space doesn't exist. Okay? It doesn't exist with God. Okay? So He's no corporal. That's how the Baal Tanya is understanding it. Okay, let's get the second proof, and then we'll finish. Another objection to the position arises from the Rambam's comment cited in section 6 above, that God knows the world through knowing Himself. That was the Rambam's words. In other words, God knows Himself. His knowledge is part of His intrinsic essence. It's not like us. We talked about this earlier, last week. When we want to know something, we have to go to school. There's a book. We have to take the knowledge and incorporate it into us. It's outside of us, and then it comes inside of us. There's no such thing with God. It's all inside of Him. Okay? He knows everything by knowing Himself. Okay?
We heard about what the angel taught us before we were born.
That's out, like I said, we're a creation. It's outside. It's being taught to us. It's being engraved in us. Okay? That's how man deals with knowledge. It becomes incorporated, and then you know. But outside, first you don't know, and then you know. Okay? But God, there's no such concept. Okay? So, Avgam Zos Lo Bedati Debra. Also, those who say that Tzimtzum is literal speak without knowledge. For they too are believers and children of believers. They are. That God knows all things formed, and they admit to that in this lowly world. And He supervises all worldly things, so that He must know them in order to supervise them. And you have to admit that through knowing them, no additional change is imposed on Him. Because, as we have learned above from the Rambam, He knows them all through knowing Himself. And, so to speak, His essence and being is one with His knowledge. Okay? Here his interpretation. In chapter 7, section 6, we learned Rambam's explanation that God is not separate from His knowledge. If God had literally removed Himself from the world, there would be a split between His knowledge and Himself. In other words, I don't know what they're doing down there. Let me investigate. Okay? Let me check it out. Right? In other words, that doesn't make sense in terms of everything that He explained with God. Okay? Let me just finish. His knowledge would extend down here to the world, a place where He Himself would not be present. Consequently, He would know something outside of Him. So this contradicts the Rambam's statement that God knows the world through knowing Himself. The Tanya has therefore raised two objections to interpreting the Tzimtzum literally. One, it violates the principle that God has no body. And two, it introduces a dualism between God and His knowledge. Right. Okay? So because of that, the Baal Tanya, these two ideas from the Rambam, who was a Rishon 1,000 years ago, right? Nobody disagrees with the Rambam. Everybody holds by the Rambam's words. So since that, he sees it from the Rambam's principles of faith, inner principles of faith, right? He comes to conclude, therefore, that the tzimtzum, the contraction, is not literal, the contraction is conceptual, meaning God is everywhere. He's infusing every single thing, every single moment. And there's a huge difference in how we approach God, and the Misnagdim one we'll get to God Emir Hashem next week. Okay, we'll stop here.
Question.
Yeah, questions?
What about the Tower of Babel? It says that
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Because really what that means when God says, I'm going to come and look down, really? Because really, of course, God didn't have to come and look down, okay? But the idea was, I have to deal with this. The reality is, in the Tower of Babel, it was a very interesting situation. They had such unity, such peace, they almost could have gotten away with it. In other words, their level of peace was almost like a God level of peace, where they almost could have gotten away with doing this war against God, so to speak. So that's why God had to intervene. I guess he used the language of, you have to explore it more. I'm going to go down and deal with this.
How about sending the angels to check out Sodom and
They didn't come check it out. They came to knock it out. One saved Lot and one, that's it. We're flushing them. Atomic nuclear warfare. Don't turn around. Okay. Don't. Right? Lot's wife. No.
Here you go.
Said she was looking